Okay, so get ready because today we're going deep, really deep into the world of,
Going deep today?
yeah, chip implants.
Ooh.
We're talking about those tiny microchips that some people believe are being secretly implanted into their bodies.
Sounds a little out there, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. But hey, that's why we're here, to dive into the deep end and see what's really going on.
Right, exactly.
So our source material for this deep dive is a YouTube video from 2017
Okay.
by Dr. Catherine Horton reporting from Zurich.
Zurich.
Now, she claims to have multiple microchips implanted
Oh, gee.
in her head and body.
Wow.
And she even uses a device called an RF tracer to try and prove it.
An RF tracer.
Yeah, so before we go any further,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can give us a little background.
Sure.
What exactly is an RF tracer and what does it detect?
Okay, so think of it like a really, really advanced metal detector,
Okay.
but instead of beeping for, like, coins,
Yeah.
it's looking for any device that emits radio frequencies.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, specifically in the range of 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz.
So more like a radio scanner than a chip detector.
Exactly. It could pick up anything from a hidden camera to a rogue Wi-Fi router, you know?
So not specifically designed to find chips in people then.
No, not at all.
Okay, but in the video, Dr. Horton uses this RF tracer, and it actually beeps and lights up when she scans her scalp.
Huh.
She even pinpoints specific spots that she says are sore, claiming they're the locations of the implants.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
pretty specific. Yeah.
And she even provides dates going back to 2012
2012.
for when she believes these implants were put in.
Wow.
So it's not just like vague feelings or anything.
Yeah.
It's got a whole timeline.
Interesting.
So if we entertain this just for a minute,
Okay.
what kind of tech are we talking about here? I mean, could microchips even be implanted undetected?
Well, that's where things get really tricky.
Okay.
Because for a microchip to be implanted without leaving a trace, it would have to be incredibly tiny.
Like how tiny?
We're talking smaller than a grain of rice.
Wow.
And that's just the size issue. Then there's the power source.
Right, because you need a battery that's equally tiny yet powerful enough to send a signal for years.
Years, yeah,
And
exactly.
continuously, I imagine.
Continuously, yep.
That's pushing it even with today's technology, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, look at our smartphones.
Right.
Packed with tech, but the battery needs charging almost daily.
Exactly. And now imagine shrinking that down to the size of a grain of rice.
Yeah, and expecting it to last for years
Years.
without any external power source.
Right.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, a really tough one.
So even RF, such tiny, undetectable microchips existed.
Mm-hmm.
Could an RF tracer even differentiate those signals from other sources?
Ah, good question.
Could there be false positives?
Absolutely.
Really?
RF tracers are designed to, like, lock onto the strongest signal they can find
Okay.
so they can be easily confused, especially in environments with lots of electronics. Think about it. Wi-Fi signals, Bluetooth devices, cell phone towers.
Right.
It's a crowded spectrum out there.
And Dr. Horton does mention that her office is aluminum clad,
Okay, yeah.
which I thought would block most signals.
Well, aluminum can block some signals, but it's not foolproof.
Really?
It depends on the frequency and thickness of the aluminum.
Oh, okay.
And remember, the device itself might be misinterpreting what it's picking up.
So we've got this claim, this
Mhm.
device seemingly picking up something,
Yeah.
but lots of questions about what that actually means.
Lots of questions.
It's intriguing, for
Yeah,
sure.
It is intriguing.
But should we take it at face value?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dr. Horton's experience is definitely compelling,
Mm,
but we need to look at alternative explanations.
right.
Consider the limitations of the tech involved,
Yeah.
before we jump to any conclusions.
Okay, so we're not dismissing her experience,
Not at all.
but we're also not taking it as proof of microchip implants just yet.
Right.
There's a lot more to unpack here.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's keep digging.
It's big.
Okay, so like getting back to the technology here for a minute,
Okay.
what would it actually take to make these undetectable microchips work?
Well, first off,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about making microchips small.
Right.
We're talking about making them, like, invisible to the naked eye.
Invisible.
Practically invisible, yeah.
And implantable.
Implantable, yeah, without a trace.
Without leaving any kind of mark. Yeah.
Because Dr. Horton claims that she's gone through, like, high security areas with metal detectors, body scanners,
Airports. Yeah.
airports, exactly, and nothing.
Wow.
No beeps, no red flags, nothing.
That's a pretty big claim.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, even if you could somehow shrink a microchip down that small,
Mm-hmm.
the power source is like the biggest hurdle.
Right, because you'd need a battery that's equally tiny,
Tiny.
but also powerful enough to emit a continuous signal
For years.
for years. And that,
Without needing a recharge.
yeah, no external power source.
It's just mind-boggling.
It really is.
I mean, even our smartphones, which are pretty advanced,
Right.
they need charging all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Imagine something 1,000 times smaller.
It just doesn't seem feasible, does it?
Not with our current understanding of technology, no.
Okay, and to be fair, Dr. Horton doesn't really go into detail.
About the chips.
Yeah, about like the specifics of how they work.
Yeah.
It's more about her experience of like feeling them
Okay.
and using the RF tracer to detect them.
Right.
She mentions things like surveillance and communication
Mm-hmm.
and that they cause her pain.
Pain.
Yeah, but
Uh-huh.
wouldn't something like that show up on a medical scan?
You'd think so, right?
Mhm.
I mean, she mentions seeing doctors,
Yeah.
getting MRI scans even,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, MRIs are incredibly detailed.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They use powerful magnets and radio waves
Okay.
to create images of your internal organs and tissues. So you'd think even a tiny metallic implant
Yeah.
would be glaringly obvious on an MRI scan.
Huh.
So are we saying she's, like, making this up?
Well, I don't know about that.
Or are we saying that multiple medical professionals
Yeah.
somehow missed something that should have been, incredibly obvious?
It's hard to say, right? I mean, there's always the possibility
Yeah.
that maybe it's not actually physical implants, but
Literally.
something else entirely.
Somehow.
Because you mentioned earlier that she talks about experiencing a lot of stress,
Mhm.
especially while working in that,
High security environment.
high security environment. Yeah.
Right, right.
And stress can manifest in really weird ways, can it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, have you ever had that thing where you think your phone's vibrating?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, and you check and it's not.
Phantom vibrations, yeah.
Or like feeling like something's crawling on your skin?
Oh, yeah. It's like your brain playing tricks on you.
Exactly. So is it possible that like what Dr. Horton is interpreting as implants and RF signals is actually her body's response to like extreme stress?
It's definitely a possibility.
Really?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, our brains are like wired to find patterns
Okay.
and make sense of the world.
Right.
Sometimes they fill in the blanks
Wheel in the blanks.
with information that, well,
That might not be accurate,
might not be entirely accurate. Yeah,
especially when we're under a lot of pressure.
exactly. Like, think about those times you've been in a dark room
Okay.
and thought you saw something move.
Yeah.
Your brain takes that limited sensory input
Mm-hmm.
and creates a story, even if it's not really there.
So you're saying that like maybe her brain is creating this narrative of implants
That's possible.
based on like stress and anxiety.
And the RF tracer readings, which, as we discussed, can be unreliable.
Right.
So it's like a combination of factors coming together.
to create this like perceived reality.
Exactly.
But I mean, she seems so genuine,
I know.
so convinced of her experience. She does.
It's not like she's trying to, like, profit from this or anything.
Right.
She's not seeking attention.
No, not at all.
She genuinely believes this is happening to her.
That's what makes it so complex, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to balance respect for her experience with a healthy dose of skepticism.
So how do we do that? How do we, like, reconcile those two things?
Well, I think it starts by looking at this from a slightly different angle.
Okay.
You see, Dr. Horton mentions being in contact with other people
Other people.
who also believe they've been implanted.
Really?
Yeah, she even uses the term targeted individuals.
Targeted individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. What if this is less about, like, individual experience
Mm-hmm.
and more about a shared belief system? Shared belief system, huh? You mean like a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there are whole online communities
Oh, yeah.
dedicated to this whole idea of,
Government microchipping and stuff.
legitimate microchipping. Yeah.
I've definitely seen that stuff online.
It's out there, that's for sure. So how did these things, like, how did they gain traction?
Well, it's like, imagine an echo chamber.
Okay.
You've got a group of people
Yeah.
with similar anxieties, maybe similar experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of reinforce each other's interpretations.
So instead of questioning those beliefs, they find comfort in that shared experience.
Exactly. Even if that experience
Right.
might be based on,
Misinterpretations or something.
misinterpretations, unfounded fears.
Wow. So it's like the lack of external validation
Mm-hmm.
actually strengthens those beliefs.
It can, yeah, because it feeds into this narrative
Okay.
of like a cover-up.
Oh, right.
Like there's some hidden truth
Right.
that only they are privy to.
It's like they're saying, see, they're trying to silence us.
Exactly.
Which proves we're right.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, actually.
It can be, yeah.
So how do you even, like, approach those conversations?
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of empathy. Active listening,
Mm-hmm.
really trying to understand where they're coming from.
Because I imagine just, like, hitting them with facts
Right.
probably isn't going to work.
It usually doesn't, no.
So what do you do?
Well, I think the key is to validate their feelings
Okay.
without necessarily validating their conclusions.
How do you do that?
You could say something like, I understand why you're scared.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like you're being watched or controlled would be terrifying.
Right.
But let's maybe look at the evidence together
Okay.
and see if there might be other explanations.
So it's about finding common ground,
Yeah.
building trust,
Trust is huge.
and acknowledging that, like,
Mhm.
even if you don't agree,
Right.
you can still respect their experience.
Exactly.
It's like planting a seed of doubt, right?
Yeah. A seed of doubt, a seed of critical thinking,
Hoping it'll grow into something more
more nuanced.
more nuanced. Yeah.
Exactly.
So where does all this leave us?
Well, I think we've seen how powerful personal experience can be, but also how easily it can be influenced.
Right. By stress, anxiety.
Stress, anxiety, external factors,
Yeah.
our own internal biases.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
So to everyone listening out there,
Mm-hmm.
if you find yourself down a similar rabbit hole,
Yeah.
take a step back,
Yeah.
take a breath,
Examine your sources.
ask questions.
Ask the tough questions like,
Yeah.
what's the evidence?
What are the other explanations?
Who benefits from me believing this?
Exactly.
Those are great questions.
Keep those in mind, and you'll be well on your way
Yeah.
to navigating this complex world we live in.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
A little unsettling at times,
Has a little bit.
but definitely a reminder that there's still so much we don't know,
Absolutely.
and that reality can be a tricky thing.
It can. It really can.
So until next time,
Until next time.
keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Dive deep.